Good morning and welcome to the End Times Guy podcast. My name is Lee, and it's a thrill to have you along for the ride this morning. Absolutely glorious Wednesday morning. Heading south into Washington, man, God has blessed us so richly. I'm passing through lands, and I love the fall for this reason. The sun just seems brighter, the sky bluer, the leaves are all changing color, they're gorgeous, the birds are all very active. The geese are getting together and rehearsing their immigration strategies. And it's just a lively, wonderful time of the year. And you know what? Every time of the year is a wonderful time of the year when you take the time to look around and appreciate what God has given us. We're so rich. Um, I have no lack of food, no lack of just passed one of our drivers heading north. Looks like he's real happy this morning. Right on. The more you thank God for the things you have, the more you realize that you have to be thankful for. And this is pleasing to God. And the Holy Spirit within us rejoices when we give God the glory and the thanks that he deserves. I mean, isn't it enough that he's given us the heart that beats in our chest, the brain between our ears, that processes such vast stores of information and accesses things so rapidly, has given us hands that are so dexterous and nimble yet strong, legs that just truck us all over the place, sometimes at great speed, sometimes not so great. Life itself is beautiful and wonderful. He's given us family and friends. We're just so rich and blessed with all the things that we've been given. And that's just our bodies. And we can move on to the environment and then go beyond all of that to God's ultimate strategy is the redemption of our souls and eternity with him. The God who is loving and who is holy. And he can't just take us into heaven as we are. Otherwise, it wouldn't be heaven anymore. If we brought all of our problems and issues and struggles and everything with us, it wouldn't be heaven, it would be earth part 2. So God is willing to work within each of us. And I'll tell you what, God invests so much more than we ever will into our salvation. In fact, our salvation is very little on our end. We confess with our mouths Jesus Christ is Lord, believe in our hearts that God has raised him from the dead. And that's it. That's what God commands. And this is our apple in the garden. God told Adam and Eve, when you eat from that tree, you will die. They decided they didn't believe God, that God's word wasn't trustworthy, and they went their own way, and the result was a disaster. God is giving you and I an equally simple option. Is God telling the truth? Is God a liar? He says, salvation is simple. Confess with your mouth, Jesus Christ is Lord. Believe in your heart that I have raised him from the dead, and you will be saved. That's all there is to it. Is God a liar, or is this word true? Each of us gets to make the same monumental, eternal decision that Adam and Eve made. Now, if we choose to take God at his word and believe that what he said is true, it's very difficult for God at that point because his gospel has to transform us from who we are into who we will become. A metamorphosis more profound than a caterpillar going into his cocoon and turning into mush and emerging a butterfly. Like Paul said, I am not what I hope. How does he word that? I'm not yet what I hope to be. But I forget what was, forget what is behind, and press on towards the mark. We are actively walking in this Christian life, faithfully honoring the commands of Jesus Christ. That's what he's called us to do. They aren't going to save us. They're just simply the new life, the new walk with Jesus Christ. In meekness, in humility, in gentleness, in hard work, in diligence, and faithfulness. But God is doing the hard part. God is doing the life changing behind the scenes. And He has faithfully been working on me for 30 years. I want you to realize that I honestly, what I deserve is for God to have given up right away. I don't deserve any of what God has done in my life. If I were God, I would have given up on me a long time ago, but God is not like us. God rejoices in fixing what is broken, in restoring what is lost. And it is His good pleasure to take someone like me who seems unfit, who seems beyond reach, beyond hope, and to just invest all that is required in my salvation. I could never save myself. I could never earn salvation. This is the work of God. And throughout eternity, I will realize and rejoice in all that God has done for me. Today, I want to talk to you about a couple of different kingdoms that are here on the planet right now. Both kingdoms are invisible. Both kingdoms are working quietly behind the scenes. One quietly, one not so quietly. But they're both invisible kingdoms. And they play, really, they're the news on the planet. What these two kingdoms are doing, that's everything. That's central to humanity. These two kingdoms literally are the two real kingdoms of the earth, only they're invisible and we can't really see them. We will in time see one of those kingdoms, but I want to talk about the other one first. A kingdom that began 2,000 years ago in the Middle East. One man began to travel through the Galilee and Judea, teaching, healing all the sick, all the maimed, all the crippled. He began to heal them. He was feeding the hungry. He was clothing the naked, taking care of people, looking after the poor, giving hope to those who were hopeless. The tax collectors, the adulteresses, the outcasts of society, the rejects, the misfits, the people that were shunned and scorned. He really loved these people and went to them to bring them comfort and hope. He did not receive fanfare. He was not recognized, nor was he adored. In fact, his patient, self-abasing work would eventually cost him his life. The people, it seems, rejected all that he did for them, and in the end killed him for it. You know I'm speaking of Jesus Christ. His ministry began 2,000 years ago, but it didn't end. It hasn't ended. It continues to this very day, and all over the planet, people just like Jesus are quietly going about, feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, giving water to the thirsty. They're all over the planet today, quietly, humbly doing the work that Jesus Christ began. And it's beautiful and it's wonderful. They're building hospitals, wells, schools, churches all over the planet. They're helping. In times of disaster, they rush in to offer support and aid and help wherever they can. But they don't make the news, okay? You're not going to read about it in the paper. CNN isn't going to do a story about them. This invisible kingdom is no less a pariah than their master was, no less despised, no less rejected by the elite and by the powerful because of what they represent. In fact, they are hated every bit as much as Jesus himself was hated. Because the people of this world, those whose hearts belong to the other kingdom, they want dominion. They want authority. They want power. And they understand that the work of Christ in this world today is in its own right an opposite kingdom, a kingdom that opposes them. And even though they're innocuous, they're harmless, they diligently do good works, the other kingdom realizes the threat they pose and despise them for it. So they don't allow them to appear in media or to be heralded. Christians, by and large, go through this life doing endless amounts of good and receiving no credit for any of it. And this is pleasing to our Father in heaven, because the day will come. Let's call it the great reveal, the great revelation. And the world is going to suddenly realize that the ministry of Jesus Christ has blessed this earth so richly and so abundantly with so many good things that it lifted the world out of darkness and fed the world and clothed the world, and was rejected and despised by that same world. They're going to realize in the end the depths of their own blindness and depravity, and it will be a testimony against them forever. That is the invisible kingdom of which you and I are members, and of which we diligently continue to work and to minister. As Paul says, I work mightily with power of God, which works mightily within me, and that's true of all of us. We are not limited to our own resources. We're only limited by our faith. God can do more than you could think or imagine in your life, in your circumstances right now. I'm not one of those name it and claim it people. If you're looking to God as a means to gain, as a means to get rich, your heart is really not right with God. God is not someone you approach seeking selfish, fleshly, carnal profit, because the message of Jesus Christ is you've got to die to yourself. It's kind of the opposite direction. But I am so thrilled that my part in history is to have been a part of this quiet, industrious, gentle, meek, humble, loving body of believers who continue the ministry of their Lord and Savior to this very day. I am honored. I am thrilled beyond all measure. There is no gold or silver, a fancy car, a big house. None of that means anything next to the knowledge that I am a part of the one true kingdom, the eternal kingdom. But there is another kingdom that I want to draw your attention to, and we read about it in Revelation chapter 13. As the chapter opens up, we find Lucifer standing on the seashore. It seems like it's holidays for Splitfoot, and he's standing on the seashore looking out over the waters, and something is rising out of the water before his very eyes. Now, at this moment in time, it is rising up into view, but that doesn't mean it suddenly came into existence. It means it was in the water for a very long time. It's been in existence for a very long time. It's only now coming into view. And that is the seven-headed beast with 10, it's a beast with 7 heads and 10 horns, and it rises out of the sea before Lucifer. And this kingdom has been among us. When it says it rises out of the waters represent the peoples of the earth. And it rises from the waters or from the people. So it rises from among us, meaning it's in our midst right now, hidden below the surface, out of sight. But I'll tell you what, if you watch the news, an analogy that will help clarify this is if you have 2 snakes stretched straight out on your bed and there's a blanket thrown over top of them, and you can't really see them. They're slim, they're slender, and the blankets don't really push up in any discernible way. You can pretend that there's no snakes in your bed at all. But if those snakes become active and start moving around, it becomes very difficult to ignore the fact that you got some snakes in your bed. Now, that's what we're seeing in the news right now. We're starting to see the 7 heads of the beast moving around, growing active. The news used to be a 1 month cycle, a 1 week cycle. It's now minute by minute. The news cycle, I am tempted to check back after only a few hours to see if Trump has been impeached. The news cycle changes that rapidly. And it's these seven heads moving under the blanket, and it's getting chaotic so that the news cycle can't really make sense of all that's taking place for it. There is no uniform mainstream story that can explain what's taking place on the planet right now. And in fact, they choose to ignore a lot of the news that is happening right now. Mainstream media is basically working more as a cloak now than as a news source, hiding the things that are taking place rather than exposing them. So I get my information from, unfortunately, YouTube and Google are becoming more and more involved in secrecy and in hiding what is taking place. Like, I just recently heard of a group called QAnon, who post to 4chan and 8chan, and it's a movement of people trying to expose the deep state, trying to expose the nefarious deeds taking place behind closed doors in the seats of power. And they've exposed a number of things that lead us to believe they're legitimate, and they're kind of a grassroots uprising against the deep state. If you don't know the term deep state, it's politicians who remain in office as presidents come and go. They remain in office or on the Supreme Court or in various branches of government for extremely long periods of time. And they're the masterminds behind the whole long-term goal of the country. And they deal with the presidents that come along in their own way. Nancy Pelosi is a great example of the deep state, someone who's been in office for 3 decades, man. 3 decades. That's longer than a lot of people have been alive. She's been sitting there in office, in power. She has enough power now that she prevented Trump from building the wall. She is very, very effective at putting these presidents on a leash. And that's what we mean by the deep state, the powers in Washington that exist almost above and behind the presidency. Sorry about that. I just finally got an opening to get rolling, and it's a big truck. It doesn't suddenly rush forward. It can take me 3 or 4 seconds after pressing the gas pedal to get rolling. And I just got rolling, and someone pulled out from an alleyway or a business there and made a mad dash for the intersection. And that happens. You can't get too upset about it. Respect for truck drivers is pretty much non-existent. And I can't say that I blame them. A lot of truck drivers on the road today are extremely aggressive. And, you know, there used to be professionalism among truck drivers, and that's really gone. I see a lot of the 5-axle trucks driven almost like taxi cabs. And drivers have done it to themselves. They haven't really earned respect. So, unfortunately, I still try to drive like a professional, and the golden rule, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Letting people get in, waiting for people, stuff like that. It makes you really a doormat today is all it does. But, you know, what are my options? Be a doormat or be an idiot. It's one or the other. I'd rather be a doormat, but anywho, yeah, that's the deep state. People in power behind the scenes who have tremendous control and a long-term vision for the country, and they just deal with presidents or prime ministers as they come and go. And QAnon has been working against this entrenched leadership. And it's very intriguing, but if you go to Google and YouTube, to search for information, you won't get any real information. All you'll get is left-wing news sources telling you that it's all garbage. And, unfortunately, Google and YouTube have become useless to people who are seeking after truth, people who want to know what's really happening. For the mainstream masses, they accept the packaged narrative. It's like McDonald's for the mind. It tastes good, but it's very, very unhealthy. It leads to death, in fact. So, DuckDuckGo is an internet browser I use, a search engine that reveals the things you're actually looking for. I recommend it, and they're very good at protecting your privacy, and that's called DuckDuckGo. But the deep state is, I believe, one of the 7 heads of the beast. As this beast is rising out of the ocean in front of Lucifer, you see 7 heads rising. And on top of those 7 heads are 10 horns. And the 10 horns each wear a crown. So those 10 horns represent 10 kings. But we got to get it out of our mind that these are kings of countries or kingdoms that we would recognize. This final kingdom is unlike anything else we've ever encountered. In Daniel, it says that the feet of the final kingdom are made both of steel and of clay. And that's the only kingdom not made of a single metallic element. All the other kingdoms are gold, silver, bronze, and iron, but this one alone is a combination, a mixture, and one of the elements is not even steel. So it's very intriguing. And this final kingdom is also said in Daniel that it will be a kingdom like no other, unlike the others. So our traditional understanding of what a kingdom is needs to be put aside if we're to discern this final kingdom that is rising out of the sea in front of Lucifer. It's been in the waters for a very long time, but in front of Lucifer, it rises into view. Like I was saying in that analogy, the snakes are wrestling under the bed, but this is the moment when the covers are thrown back and you actually see the serpents. Before, you didn't realize they were cobras. Now you do. Now you see clearly. Well, in this moment, when the beast kingdom rises, we will see it clearly. And it's got 10 horns or 10 leaders. Let's use the word leaders because that's the best way to prevent us from getting trapped in a mindset that may or may not even be true. Now, the 7 heads have been suggested to represent the 7 hills of Rome, or 7 nations, or 7 geographic locations. But I am suggesting today, which I believe the Holy Spirit has, I'm just passing bushes that are brilliant red. It just takes your breath away. Gold and orange leaves, and in this bush that is flaming red with leaves that have turned their fall colors. It just takes your breath away. These 7 heads represent 7 entities that have existed on the earth, some for a very long time, others more recently, who are going to be united. Now, they work to the same ends right now, but are seen as separate. So as the beast is rising out of the sea, they are 7 separate entities. And it's only when the body of the beast rises that you see that they are one, they are united in body, but they are 7 entities. And I've already said, I believe the deep state is one head, one entity that makes up the beast. I believe the green movement and climate change hysteria is another head of the beast, drawing on the religious fervor of humanity to bring about unity. Another one is the New Age. All of these working together to the same end, the unification of power on the earth, occult power by any means. Another one may or may not be communism. Another could potentially be the military-industrial complex. So, and another one almost certainly is the technocracy made up of people like Bill Gates, um, Jeff Bezos of Amazon, uh, Tesla, what's his name? Elon Musk, Zuckerberg and Facebook, the Google crew, technocracy, and all of their control will certainly play a vital role in the unification of the final beast. Now, in China right now, you need to use facial recognition to access the internet. And that facial recognition in time will be their online identity, and it will become the mark of the beast in some form or another. They will have to receive something on the right hand or forehead containing the name or the number of the Antichrist on the mark so that they will be able to access the internet. But for now, it's facial recognition, and that's how they're going to amass the information of who these individuals are so that when they are marked, they know that they have the right person. Over here in the West, we're moving towards having an online or digital identification so that our access to the internet will depend on our digital identity so that the internet knows who we are. It's the very same thing, but we have a little bit more freedom than the Chinese. Not a lot, but a little bit more freedom than them. The only difference is they're willing to fight for their freedom. We're not. And realistically, we know that these things must come. And I look at it and I wonder, what's the point in taking up arms when all of these things are about to unfold on the planet? Are we going to shoot our way out of the end times? I don't think so. And we are called to bless those who curse, to love those who persecute us, and to pray for those who despise us and wrongfully use us. So guns aren't the answer. Clinging to Christ, clinging to the cross is the answer. That's the only sure answer in these perilous times. But as these seven heads rise out of the sea, they are knit together in one single body, and the body represented in Revelation chapter 13 seems to be centralized in Europe. It contains elements of the bear, the lion, and the leopard, which potentially could mean Russia, England, and Germany. But the body of the beast really isn't that critical because the main power in the beast will exist in its seven heads, the seven different entities that make up its heads, and certainly the 10 kings who rule over it. Oh, it looks like there's some sort of a accident here. It looks like a truck rolled in the ditch, and they've got tow trucks out and the police out trying to clean up the mess. Yeah, wow, that trucker, and it's not a corner, it's a straight stretch, so it looks like he just veered off the road and tumbled into the ditch. It really is unfortunate. I feel bad for him. Oh, you know what? He was trying to make a right turn off of this very busy little road. Yeah, the poor guy. So, this invisible kingdom has been around for a very long time, and it's about to rise into full view, but it doesn't rise out to say, here I am. It rises out in the presence of the dragon, who is Satan. And it's for a purpose, because Satan gives his own spiritual authority. Remember, Satan is the prince of the power of the air. Satan gives his authority to the beast. This final kingdom, this Leviathan that is so complex, so convoluted, so much of it happens in secret, behind closed doors, in the higher realms of power where you and I will never know their names or faces. They receive authority from Satan. And this is frightening. that this final kingdom will have spiritual authority. And then this is where the Antichrist rises. And interestingly, he doesn't rise from the water. He doesn't arise from the people. He arises from the earth. And I don't know exactly what that means, but I think that the Antichrist will manifest himself in a unique way. And it will be very clear who he is. And it says in Revelation 13 that he has eyes and a mouth. None of the other kings or horns have eyes and a mouth, but the Antichrist does. He has eyes that see and a mouth to speak great boasts. And he displaces 3 of the kings or 3 of the heads of this strange beast kingdom and begins to rule the whole of the beast himself. He is the one in charge of the beast, and he causes the people of the earth to make an image of the beast. Now, we were commanded not to make an image or an idol. That's one of the first commandments. Or have a likeness rather than our Father who is in heaven. We worship God and him only. But here we see one of the first things the Antichrist causes mankind to do is to make an idol. And it's an image of the beast. And I'll get more into that at another time. But I wanted to share with you that this end times kingdom is going to be really hard to understand, really hard to get our minds around what exactly it is, but that it will be a global power made up of 7 distinct entities who work together and will be united under the Antichrist. I hope this helps in your understanding of prophetic events. Thank you so much for joining me, and God bless you.